My brothers, good evening and welcome to a special Masonic talk presented by Craftsman Online. Craftsman Online is a New York State initiative by brothers, for brothers, connecting brethren with leadership development, Masonic education, and celebrating the history of New York Freemasonry and the special men who have served and continue to serve our gentle craft. The experiences, comments, opinions, and views that are going to be shared during this evening's program are those of individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, concordant body, appendant body, or Masonic authority. My name is Michael Arce. I'll be serving as the digital Tyler for this evening's presentation. We're going to begin the program in just a few moments. I want to point out a few things. One, it would be helpful for questions and answers later. If your name that is reflected on your account is yours, you can rename that in Zoom. Instead of being iPad 1 or Dad's MacBook, you can change that to your first and last name if you like, so that we can call on you. Your microphones are also going to be muted for the portion of the speaker's presentation tonight, but then again, unmuted for questions and answers and for our general gathering afterwards. I'd like to introduce a couple of brothers that will be speaking tonight. The first is Worshipful Brother Ron Seafried. He's going to be telling us about his upcoming Masonic talk that'll be taking place on Thursday, December 17th, on his book, Images of America, Long Island Freemasonry. Brother Ron.
Thank you, Brother Michael. How are you, brothers? I'm glad for everybody to come out tonight. In 2 weeks, we'll have a video presentation on my new book, Long Island Freemasons from Arcadia Publishing. Let me do a quick share screen here. The book will cover many recently found pictures of Long Island Freemasons, including Masonic lodges, concordant bodies, parades taken over the last 200 years, cornerstone layings, old lodgings are no longer around. This is the 1920s in Floral Park. Concordant bodies, including old Knights Templar groups, Truth Triangle, and even the Shriners. And the talk will also include a discussion on long lost artifacts, including very old Masonic aprons, hand-carved lion's paw gavels, original charters dating back to the 18th century, late 18th century. This is Morton Lodge number 63. Original Masonic passports from the late 18th century. The oldest continuously used lodge room on Long Island. This dates back to 1879. This is in Northport. And even recent artwork. This is recently put up in Baldwin Lodge Temple down in Nassau County. And a recently discovered long lost Masonic dome, which is currently residing in a children's center in Long Beach. The lodge was sold in the 1970s. And this is the dome still intact. And it's been enjoyed by little kids for the last 40 years. Here's a close-up of that dome. This dates back to the 1920s. And of course, this is the lodge officers that raised Brother Theodore Roosevelt, the only president to be raised in Freemasonry on Long Island in Mid-Hudson Lodge 807 in Oyster Bay. So this is part of the long-running Images of America series. And my new book, Long Island Freemasons, we'll discuss more and have many more pictures and outtakes from the book. If you already have a copy, there'll be outtakes from that didn't make the final publishing. And there'll be a link available to purchase more copies. All net proceeds of the sale do go to Masonic charities. Thank you, brothers.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, thank you, Brother Ron. Again, that presentation is to be taking place as our next Masonic talk on Thursday, December 17th, right here on Zoom. We also have another program, the first of the year, that we're excited to promote that'll be happening on Monday, January 25th, to celebrate the life of Brother Robert Burns. I'd like to welcome the man who is wearing his own Masonic hockey jersey, Brother Nathan Tweedy, who's going to be hosting our first virtual Robert Burns night. Tell us a little bit about how we're going to be celebrating his life, of course, virtually, Brother Tweedy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, so those of you who have been to a Burns night dinner before, obviously in a virtual setting, things will be a little different. Those of you who have no idea who Robert Burns is or what a Burns night dinner is, I'll give you a quick overview. So Robert Burns was the Scottish national poet. He's the Poet Laureate of Scotland, and he's also a brother Freemason. His first book was published in large part because of the support of the local Masonic Lodge, and as a result, he's had a lot of Masonically influenced works throughout the years, some poems and some songs. However, as this book shows, which is not my book, but the Scots invented the modern world. So as a result of that, this is more of a night of Scottish, celebrating Scotland and the Scottish diaspora throughout the world. So it's a night to celebrate the works of Brother Burns by reading his poetry and his singing and performing his music, as well as celebrating Scotland as a whole. Traditionally, this includes piping in of the haggis, which we will have done, as well as the address to the haggis, which hopefully will be done by one of our brothers born in Scotland. So you get that nice proper Scottish brogue. But also the rest of the evening will include short informational portions about the history of Robert Burns, who he is and what his Masonic life was, as well as learning a little bit more about Scotch. I saw Right Worshipful Brother Morley in here, and he can testify there's more than one type of Scotch out there. So definitely learn about the different types of Scotches and hopefully get some for yourself and enjoy along with us as we do a slight tasting. But also there'll be plenty of toasts to different brothers, Robert Burns, as well as other things in general. So think of it kind of a celebration of Scotland, a little education, and kind of a table lodge mixed in. So it's going to be a great night, and I strongly encourage anyone who can to come along and join us on January 25th.
Thank you, Brother Tweedy. I'm pumped to do the real toasts with real drinks that will be done virtually. And we ask you to be virtually responsible with your attendance that evening as well. Again, a lot of our programs, you can join them through our Facebook page and follow the events to see what we're doing. Facebook.com/craftsmanonline. You can also visit our website, craftsmanonline.com, to sign up for our email newsletter and start getting all these invitations and updates right into your inbox. I do want to remind you that tonight's presentation is being recorded, and we're going to be uploading it to our website, craftsmanonline.com, for playback. If you'd like to share it with other brothers or perhaps with your lodge, just click on the Masonic Talks link on our site, Craftsman Online. Also, if you have a question that you'd like to ask our guests, I'll be monitoring the chat feature, so please be using that. You can either send it to me directly or ask it in an open forum. I'll make sure to collect those for the end of tonight's programs for questions and answers. Before we get started with introducing our MC for this evening, my brothers, I'd like for you to give your attention to our Grand Chaplain for the invocation, Right Worshipful Thomas Carbone.
Okay. All right. No, I'm muted.
You're good.
He just muted himself again.
Uh,
Hold the space bar down, Tom. It's easier.
I got you. Okay, no problem. I was working it the other way. Heavenly Father, we ask for thy presence and blessing during this evening's virtual meeting. The world and our brotherhood are suffering greatly during this pandemic. Many of our brethren, family, and friends have lost a family member, have been sick themselves, lost their jobs or businesses during this time. We place our trust firmly in thee as the supreme architect of our lives. May we be most thankful for whatever relief and guidance you grant us in the coming days and months ahead. May we always be patient, humble, and charitable in the performance of all our fraternal endeavors. Amen.
So mote it be.
Thank you very much, my brother. With that said, I'd like to pass over the beginning of the program tonight to our Grand Treasurer, Right Worshipful Stephen Adam Rubin. Brother Rubin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother R.C. My brothers, we have joined the craft for many reasons. Its philosophy, its history, for brotherhood. While those aspects are fulfilling, enlightening, and meaningful, without brothers ready, willing, and able to take on leadership roles and the knowledge and skill to address the challenges that every lodge faces, we are doomed. For we simply can't do ritual if the light bill isn't paid or water is pouring down through the cracks in our roof or if the IRS is calling. Indeed, we are living in ever complex times with more rules, regulations, and laws that call upon our brothers to not only be master masons, but accountants, plumbers, and property managers. So I'm grateful to you that you care enough to do the hard job and care enough to learn about options that just might save your lodge thousands of dollars and protect and preserve masonry in the process. For that is how important it is that as a Grand Lodge and as individual lodges, we tackle these most challenging issues of dollars and cents. At the conclusion of our speaker's remarks, we will take questions and comments from the audience. I'm grateful for your presence this evening. I'm also grateful for our speaker, Right Worshipful Mike Siegel, for taking the time to be with us once again. Brother Mike is an attorney and a distinguished brother who is the current District Deputy Grand Master of the Mid-Hudson Masonic District. I present to you Right Worshipful Mike Siegel, and Masonic Buildings Ownership, Tax Issues and Implications. Brother Mike.
Thank you, Brother Steve. I appreciate you inviting me here tonight. I appreciate all the brothers who are here with us tonight and giving me the opportunity to speak to you about taxation and the possibility of tax exemptions for Masonic lodges. At this time, I've worked with a fair number of lodges, Masonic organizations, and outside not-for-profit organizations to analyze strategies that would exempt them from paying New York State sales taxes and New York State county, town, city, village, real estate taxes, and also to allow them to pass along tax exemptions to individuals and organizations that give them gifts. I want to caution you, though, that this is not a route for every lodge, and not every lodge should take this route in the way they present themselves. I have counseled several lodges and Masonic organizations that have come to me for assistance that they should not seek a tax exemption after reviewing their circumstances. And there are definitely lodges in our state that would benefit from considering tax strategies. Of course, it's been pointed out to me and that there is nothing better for lodge health than building a lodge's membership. The Grand Lodge has energetically developed impressive methods for both attracting new members and retaining them. I am particularly impressed with the social media campaign recently developed by the Grand Lodge in conjunction with the Scottish Rite and the North Star program. Your interest in tonight's program should equally interest you in utilizing these programs. If you haven't, they should be of interest to you for the same reason that you were here tonight listening to me. Building lodge membership is the best road to a lodge's financial health, even more so than a tax exemption could ever be. But there is one thing that particularly irks me, and that is a lodge that has to spend all or most of its resources and its fundraising efforts on raising money to pay real estate taxes instead of focusing on raising funds for charity and the welfare of brothers and their families in need. For me, raising money to pay taxes is not an activity that I really want to spend my time on. Conversely, I sit on a Masonic charity board, the Capital Region Scottish Rite Charities, Inc. This charity raises money to assist Brother Masons in need and their families. This I find very rewarding and meaningful, and I consider it a way of fulfilling my obligations as a Mason. If I can interest any Scottish Rite Masons in joining this charity, the annual dues are only $25, and you may contact me if you're interested. When I first started thinking about tax exemptions for lodges, I got in touch with Right Worshipful Alan Bryant, the chairman of the Lodge Building and Grounds Committee. Alan is very generous with his time and not only knowledgeable about tax exemptions, but has become an expert in this area. I find his breakdown about it very thorough and illuminating. And I highly recommend that those of you who are exploring the idea of tax exemption for your lodge take the time to reach out to Alan and tap his knowledge about it if you haven't done so already. Alan has personally gone through the process of getting a tax exemption for his lodge, and he's been successful at it. His core beliefs on this rest on a solid foundation. But as I stated at the beginning of my talk today, Alan's core beliefs are not going to work for every lodge. I don't want to spend too much time lecturing you tonight. I'm hoping to have a longer question and answer period. So I ask that you guys either type your questions in the chat as the Craftsman Online moderator has asked you to do, or that you click the participants logo at the bottom and raise your hand, and we will call on you later to join in discussion. Before I get to your questions, though, let's review some of the basics. Under the IRS regulations, there are 29 types of nonprofits, all designated as 501Cs. That is 501C1 through 501C29. Out of these 29 types of 501Cs, not-for-profit organizations, the only designation eligible for tax exemption from paying real estate taxes are designated as 501c3. Masonic lodges under the Grand Lodge of the State of New York are 501c10s, domestic fraternal societies and associations. So they are not eligible for real estate tax exemptions or tax exemptions for that matter. But many municipalities and assessors do give or have given Masonic lodges tax breaks because of their charitable works. 501c3s are religious, educational, charitable, scientific, or literary organizations, and museums and historical societies, when designated as such, can fall under this classification. In order to get a 501c3 exemption, you will need to be recognized as a charity, an educational organization, or as a museum or historical society. Alan Bryant's lodge, Queensberry Lodge, became a museum. They operate as the Queensberry Masonic Historical Society. If you want to go that route, in order to have and keep a museum charter, you have to man exhibitions that are open to the public for a minimum number of hours over the course of the year. But for a number of lodges, we have worked with a tax professional, Robert O'Hara, and chartered separate not-for-profits for the lodges. They have educational and charitable purposes with Masonic principles at their core. And we have gotten them recognized as 501c3s, transferred the lodge building ownership to those organizations with clawback provisions, and applied for and received exemptions for real estate taxes. Now, in order to form a tax-exempt eligible organization, it needs to be a real organization, and it must act and operate visibly under the mission that you set out for it. There are record-keeping obligations and filing obligations for it that you need to keep up with. If you set one up and you go through the whole process of doing this, and then you can't keep up with the organizational requirements, you will end up right back where you started before you did all this. So I urge you to carefully consider your lodge's ability to sustain the needed requirements. That is one of the points of the analysis that we take when we sit down with lodges to plan this out. I also need you to know that if you collect building rent from other organizations, that will work against you when you go to seek a tax exemption. Using a facility you own to collect rent is not an educational or charitable activity. And it does not fall under 501c3 guidelines. And your tax assessors will take a very dim view of it when you're applying for a tax exemption. I recommend that if you're going to go through the process of getting a tax exemption, that you hire the fellow that we've been working with for about a dozen lodges now, and that's Bob O'Hara. We've had a lot of success with his work. I'm happy to refer you to him once we go over your circumstances and decide if you are a good candidate for this. I also urge you to talk to Alan Bryant and or myself during the process of your analysis of your lodge's circumstances. And you really need to decide in a very rational way whether this makes sense for you. I know that when Alan applied for this, whoops, something has taken over the screen. I'm sorry, the screen has distracted me.
No problem. My brother, just click the button that says stop sharing your screen and you should be good to go.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Anyway, I was just saying that Alan, when he did this process, and he has talked about this, it took Alan 4 or 5 years to go through it, and he did it by himself, which is very admirable. But if we get everything together that Bob asked for, the fellow that I work with, and you hand it over to Bob, Bob can generally get you there sometimes within a year, and even as much as a year and a half. I'm going to talk about a thumbnail sketch of the process before we take questions. The process starts by forming bylaws and filing for a not-for-profit corporation with the New York State Division of Corporations. You have to apply for a federal EIN number, and then you have to fill out and file an IRS Form 1023 or 1023-EZ. And part of the analysis we do is to determine if you are eligible for the 1023-EZ. And you pay the IRS a filing fee with that. The EZ must be done online, and you need to set up an online account to do it. And just a word about the 1023. It is not for the faint of heart. I am an attorney, and I'm trained to deal with stuff like this, and it makes me want to pull my hair out. I don't have very much left, by the way. I've tried to fill them out, and it's a little mind-numbing. And that's why I prefer to go to the route of using a guy who's an expert at doing it. After the IRS grants your exemption, you will need to fill out and file Form CHAR 410. That's CHAR 410 with the Charities Bureau of New York State. And there's a small filing fee that goes with that. If New York State approves your organization, and their approval will allow you to avoid paying sales tax, by the way, then the lodge has to conduct a summons vote to transfer the property to the new organization. Upon such approval, you have to transfer the property by deed. And this is a very important part of this. You must put a clawback provision in the deed to guard against what happens if the organization wishes to shut down and or sell the property. This is because if a charity sells its property, the proceeds have to either go to another charity or to the state, and it gets monitored by the Attorney General of the state of New York. The deed gets filed with the county, town, and state transfer documents, and we generally need the info from the last deed of the lodge and the tax bill of the lodge to prepare this deed and the transfer documents. And the deed must be signed by the lodge's trustees and notarized. After filing the deed, you have to file what is known as a 420 AB org and a 420 AB use. with the town tax assessor's office before March of the year. And the 420 is another document that must be notarized. You are supposed to refile a 420 AB RNW annually, although there appears to be some exceptions to this rule. The organization needs to file a 990 or a 990 EZ annually, and you also have to file an annual CHAR 500 report to the New York State Bureau of Charities. Failure to file the IRS 990 and the New York State CHAR 500 3 years in a row, and your organization loses its 501c3 status. Failure to file the 420AB annually to the tax assessor can also result in a loss of the property tax exemption. And as a technicality, if you lose your 501c3 status, you are not eligible for a property tax exemption. Okay, at this time, we will take questions from the audience.
Brother, the first question comes from worshipful brother Walter Clis. I knew I was going to get this last name.
Very good effort.
Thank you. He's the past master of Bethlehem Lodge and the current lodge secretary and secretary of the Del Mar Masonic Temple Association. And he has a question on the 501c2s.
So we ended up coming at this from a little different, just by way of background. Our building had been separately owned by a temple association that was chartered in the 1920s. We had operated just, kind of naively for a lot of years. My understanding is that prior to 2008, there wasn't a small charities IRS reporting requirement. So the question came up, well, what should we file? And in doing some research, much like Brother Alan Bryant had done, I kind of researched it and passed it by a couple of the professionals who are affiliated with the lodge. And it seemed like the 501c2 was a fit for us because it specifically talks to an organization that holds property for a related organization such as a Masonic lodge. And so seemed like the easiest way to go based on what we could see. It seemed to fit hand in glove. Now, of course, we're a bunch of dedicated volunteer non-professionals, so we don't know what we don't know. Filing process was, I think, was $600 and looking at 5 years worth of financials. And we got reasonably quick approval, then reasonably quick disapproval because they said, hey, you haven't filed your 990N in 3 years. And then I called to Kansas City and they reinstated it. So I think I've already learned a couple of things that I need to consider, like New York State requirements. We did get approved by the IRS for the 501c2. I actually came here because I was in conversation with Brother Rubin about our bylaws, because our bylaws basically say that any net income has to go to a to basically relief of widows, orphans, or distressed master masons, which is in conflict with my understanding of how the 501c2s work, which is that any net income above reasonable reserves has to be paid back to the related organization. So what brought me here tonight was to find out any details on amending our bylaws, any details on our bylaws are broken down between Constitution and which the net income part is a part of, and the proper bylaws, which are the operating documents. So that's a long-winded way of saying, first of all, as a 501c2, is there anything based on the small thumbnail sketch that I've given you that you can point me in the direction of investigating? Second, is there anything magical about having a clause in something called a constitution in your bylaws document that would cause any headaches on trying to amend it?
The answer is I don't have an answer for you, Walt. I'll be happy to sit down with you and go over this and look into it. but it's not something I can pull out of the top of my head for you.
Fair enough. And as far as the New York State charity requirements, interestingly enough, we were already incorporated in the state of New York. We already had a tax ID number. What we didn't have was any official recognition at the federal level, and we've taken no steps at the state level. So I'm guessing that's another sidebar conversation to say if there's any benefit. I mean, we're only paying, we've chosen not to rock the boat with our town because I think we're paying all of $400 a year in town taxes. So,
And I'm going to, now that you've said that, I'm going to interject, because this is similar to the situation we found with the Albany Temple. If you have a favorable tax circumstance, you really should not be rocking the boat. It does not serve you to save $300 to spend the time and effort to go through all this and face the risk of having a renewed look at what you're doing.
right.
So I'm going to tell you that $300 tax bill is really a big deal.
Yeah, well, we realized that when it was brother had brought up, hey, should we talk to him? It's like, no, stay away. And for us, we, as Masons, because we are, obligated to meet all laws of our federal and local jurisdictions. That's what got us hunting for the tax exempt status at the federal level, which kind of brought us into, filing requirement. And if the IRS decided they were going to come at us, it stopped any non-filing penalties. So far, so good. I'm knocking on my wooden table here. So anyway, thank you for your time.
It's not a problem. Look, Walt brings up something that I've run into a number of times, and I mentioned, it in passing in my talk, but not really with specifics. But there are lodges that have favorable tax treatment. They may not realize it, but they do. And if you have favorable tax treatment, it is really not necessary to explore the idea of a tax exemption. You really have to go into this with your eyes open. When you have it good, there's no reason to change it.
Brother, our next question is from Bob Jensen. Bob might be having some technical difficulties. Bob had a question. He wanted to know the tax expert, Alan who, ? And how do I go about contacting him?
Alan Bryant is the chairman of the Lodge and Buildings and Grounds Committee. And if you get a Grand Lodge directory, he's listed in it. I'm happy to share his information with anybody who needs it. Alan, I'm sorry, I know you're present here tonight. I'm sorry to volunteer you, but I know you to be a generous man, so I don't have qualms about it.
Brother Michael, I didn't see actually Alan here. It's so difficult to know who's present in the Zoom conference, in the Zoom program. But I've been speaking with Brother Alan, and I plan on scheduling him sometime in January, so everyone will have an opportunity to also hear Brother Alan's take on this, important subject. So thank you so much, and thank you, Right Worshipful Brother Alan, for attending.
Alan's take is very valuable. Again, I relied on it when I first started looking into this, and I highly recommend that you spend some time talking to Alan in reviewing this information.
Next question is from Gil's iPad. Gil had just raised his hand, so we'll let him ask his question. Gil? Dun, 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 dun. No Gil. All right, we're going to move on. John had asked a question. Is there a checklist with the form requirements that were mentioned?
The IRS has a checklist, and you can download the checklist from the IRS. the form comes with instructions.
All right, our next question comes from Joe in Latham. I've asked Joe to unmute, but I can ask it for him if he's not able to jump on. Joe's question is, what if the first floor of a 3-story lodge is rented and also a Verizon antenna rent space on the roof of this tall building? Can a partial exemption be sought if circumstances dictate?
Well, yeah, the answer is yes, but you have to disclose the income that you're receiving from the rentals, and you do face a risk that the town tax assessor will look at that income and possibly raise your rates.
All right, and the final question that I have in the chat is from Vincent Scaldone. Vincent, are you here with us still?
I am.
All right, feel free to ask your question.
I'm just curious, from the start of the process to the end, you said about a year and a half, to obtain a 501c3. What would be the approximate cost for a lodge to do this?
Bob charges $3,000 to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
What are the filing fees with that as well, approximately?
I think that he pays the filing fees from that in addition to it. I mean, I think it's all inclusive.
And if anybody was interested in Alan's contact information, he has shared that in the chat. Because we're going to be recording this and putting it up on the website, I don't feel like I want to share his phone number and email address with anyone in the whole wide world. So I would direct your attention to the chat. He's the absolute last person who just made a comment under Alan Bryant, and he shared his contact information. With that said, we have no more questions from the floor or in the chat.
Thank you, brothers. I'm very honored that there are so many of you here tonight. And a lot of you I know already, and there's some distinguished brother Masons in here that I've dealt with in the past, and I'm flattered that you have attended tonight. Thank you very much.
It looks like we have one late question. Let me get him to unmute here. I'm getting all the tough names to pronounce, and since I have a really tough last name, I'll see if I can get him to unmute to ask his question. But the brother that just said they had a question in the chat, you are unmuted and ready to go.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's Yves Etienne. So,
thank you very much for that.
sorry about it. Question is, if 2 or 3 lodges are merged, right? How do they, how will I say that, remove their tax exempt information? Or do they have to?
Remove the tax exempt?
Yeah, if three lodges merge together, so do they need to keep their tax exempt 990, or they have to remove them?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if my question makes sense.
All right, I'll just go through an analysis of what you're saying generally. If a lodge merges and becomes another lodge, you are automatically a 501c10, and that lodge must file an annual 990 report. Your charter under the Grand Lodge grants you your C10 status. So the lodges that discontinue, they are no longer organizations. You don't have to worry about them. But the lodge that is in existence, that lodge has to file a 990 as that lodge for as a C10.
Okay, so yeah, so the other lodge that lost the title or the name doesn't have to do anything. They just like leave it alone.
You can notify the IRS that those organizations no longer exist. It's probably a good idea.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, and that was the last one in the chat. You did get you did get one more question from Frank Semino, who asked, if you do a tax redemption, does that also qualify for those contributing to its fundraiser also get established as their own charitable contribution? If you need me, I can reach out to him to unmute to clarify that one.
I'm just going to make a general statement. If you are a 501c3 tax exempt organization, donations to a 501c3 tax exempt organization, if not in exchange for services, if it's just a gift, is tax exempt. So somebody can use that donation to take a deduction on their annual taxes, but the lodge does have to write that person a letter acknowledging receipt of that donation and stating that they have not received services in exchange for that money.
All right. With that said, you did get one thank you for taking the time to share this program from Dan Williams. And on behalf of Dan and everybody, I want to thank you. And Right Worshipful Rubin, the floor is again yours.
I wanted to just actually make one comment that that I'm aware of actually one lodge that was similar to something that Right Worshipful Brother Mike mentioned, and that is it actually rents out this lodge on Long Island that was successful in obtaining some tax exemptions, and they actually have a fair amount of income from renting out their collation room. And the agreement that they have with their local tax assessor was like it was 50% taxes off, so that they worked it out because they are taking a fair amount of income in, that the whole building was not 100% off the tax rolls, but just percentage wise. So I think that's something that's similar to what Brother Michael was talking about. Right Worshipful Brother Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here and sharing your knowledge with our brothers. And I want to thank all the brothers that are here. And I apologize. I know that there are, on these 3 pages of Zooms, many distinguished brothers, and I've seen some names, not some other names. And so I didn't even know that most excellent and Right Worshipful Alan Bryant was here. I see Right Worshipful Brother Scott Pete here. Past officers, Grand Lodge officers as well. So please forgive me. A Zoom program is not a very good mechanism to introduce and to thank such distinguished brothers for being with us this evening. I want to thank you all for attending, and I know and I can tell that from the glazed looks on everyone's faces and probably the lack of questions that this is a daunting subject and a daunting challenge that we all face. I think that if we've learned anything, it's just that there are possible answers, and possibly the solutions are to reach out to those individuals and those professionals, as well as those brothers, such as Right Worshipful Brother Allen, who will hopefully extend some time and to help evaluate each of your lodge's situations here. But just not doing anything clearly is not the answer. So I applaud you for all being here this evening, and I thank you for your commitment to your lodges and to Masonry. This program, as you've heard, and all of the programs that we've been putting on will be uploaded to craftsmanonline.com. I hope that you will visit the site for this program, other programs, as well as really wonderful, awesome current articles written by your brothers about our brothers and our lodges and our shared Masonic story. I will look forward to seeing you on December 17th for History Remembered with Brother Ron as he presents Long Island Freemasonry. God bless you, my brothers. God bless our country. God bless our craft. And good night.
Good night.